If I was to tell you that the best specialization for a 4-man heroic mission was the gunner specialization, I'm pretty sure not many of you would believe me. But luckily, I've got some proof here. Now, I know many of you don't like to actually watch the full video. A lot of you just skip through it and, get to the build and then leave. But I do want to let you know I will actually be covering different variations of this build that you can use. So let's say you don't have all the pieces or you don't have all the weapons or mods that I am currently using. I will go over different options that you can actually use to make a build very similar to this, regardless of what gear you actually have now. And if you don't really have any of this type of gear in stock, this will make it much easier for you to actually go out and farm this stuff because you won't be locked to a specific shopping list. If you get these good pieces and you can use them for this build, that's all you really need to get started. Now, if you're already watching the footage, I guess you could probably already tell why I'm calling this build the Lockdown, because I am just shutting the enemy down and I am allowing all of my teammates to just open fire without worry. I mean, they are just destroying enemies because the enemy can't fight back. It is fantastic. And if you're familiar with the Outcast Stronghold, you know just how difficult it can be. And especially when you're doing it on Heroic, it is one of the worst missions to actually do, especially with, random groups. This was a one and done deal. And even more impressively, this was my first time actually running this build. This was my trial run. Alright, so obviously, as I stated, I am running the gunner specialization. Now, for my main weapon, I am using a black market AKM. Now, it's not really that big of a deal. It's just one of the main skill build weapons that I actually have, and that's just because it has spike, but it's not really that effective on this build because I'm not using skill damage. My main workhorse on this build is actually my Everlasting Gaze rifle. Now, I just got this today. Now, that actually has perfect perpetuation on it, which basically gives me 50% status effect duration whenever I get a headshot, and its cooldown is 16 seconds. My sidearm is a Storm, and it has regular perpetuation, so just in case I run out of ammo for whatever reason, I have a backup. My mask, I am using a Wyvern wear for that 2-piece for the skill damage and the status effects. Now, I did actually get an upgraded piece. This one, however, is rolled in skill damage, status effect, and I've got a skill haste mod on it. Alright, next up we have the Golan Gear chest, which has the 10% status effect for the brand set. It's rolled in skill tier, but it came with status effect, skill haste, and I've got a skill haste mod on there. The talent's protected reload, but I had to make a sacrifice to get that skill tier, so basically I've got that piece on there. Not the best in slot, but I will go over the better options later. Alright, moving into my Hana-U holster. This one's rolled in skill damage and status effect. Moving on to my Kneepads. They are Wyvern wear with skill damage and skill haste. I've got Hana-U gloves with status effect and skill haste. And then I've got the Acosta Go Bag, which has skill haste, skill damage, and a skill haste mod. And obviously the talent, basically whenever I damage an enemy with a grenade, I can get an extra skill tier, or I can get overcharge. And the 2 in the bag talent obviously gives me the 1 extra armor kit, 3 grenades, 25% ammo, 10% repair skills, and 10% status effect, which is one of the main things that I have this bag for. Alright, so let's say you don't actually have all these pieces. Let's say you don't have the right ones. What is the most important aspects of this build? First, you want to get as many of your attributes to be status effect as possible. Then you want to get as many of your attributes to be skill haste as possible. Now, let's say you don't actually have the Acosta Go Bag. Replace all the Hana-U and Acosta Go Bag with the China Light 3-piece. So that will end up giving you skill haste and status effects, that basically kind of covering what you lost. The next thing you want to make sure of is that you have 3 of the yellow mod slots. So this can be done with the Wyvern wear. You can have the 2 pieces for the Wyvern wear, the chest and the backpack. Now, I suggest you get a Golan gear either in the mask, knee pads, holster, or gloves. And this is because you're going to need to roll off the armor roll to get a skill tier on it. And the reason that I don't want you to get a Golan gear on your chest or your backpack, unfortunately like I do, is because it's going to be really difficult to get God roll, skill haste, and status effect on your attributes with the Golan gear, because you are already going to need to roll your armor roll into skill tier. Plus, you don't want to actually have that additional RNG with the talent, because you're only going to get 1 roll, so you want to make sure it's as easy as possible. With the other sets that you don't have to actually automatically roll the armor off, it makes it much easier. So that's why I say get it on the mask, get it on the holster, the knees, or the gloves. Leave the talents for the skill tier native sets. So just to go over that again, you want to have as much skill haste and as much status effect as you can on your rolls. You want to have, those sets that I already talked about. You want to have the Golan gear, you want to have the Wyvern wear, and then you also want to have either China Light or Hana-U. Now, the other option you can actually choose is the hardwired gear set. Now, with the hardwired, obviously you only get 1 attribute roll, so I would go with status effect. Because what you're going to do is you're going to use the hardwired backpack to get you that 10-second rotation cooldown. That'll eliminate most of your need for skill haste. You are going to actually need to manage your skills a lot more, and you're not going to be able to panic to, keep that rotation going. But that'll be the best option for you if you lack a lot of these pieces, because hardwired will be the easiest for you to get. You can craft it, and then you can basically just solve 4 of your pieces right off the bat without any difficulty. Plus, you don't have to worry about that backpack talent. All right, so you can see that my talents weren't really optimal. I did have the Acosta go bag, so that did take care of that, but my chest piece talent was rather crappy. So what I would suggest, if you do not have the Acosta go bag and you are using China Light, go with the Energize, because that'll also give you the overcharge whenever you use an armor kit. Possibly one of the best options is actually Galvanize, which basically whenever you apply Blind, Ensnare, Confuse, or Shock, you actually grant 40% of your armor for 10 seconds. Now obviously you don't have that much armor, but you are going to constantly be applying these status effects, constantly giving your team this 40% armor. So, 300k armor isn't really that bad of a deal for free, just constantly giving it to them. That is definitely good for support. And you know what? They're not even going to be taking that much damage anyway, but it's still something that's nice to have. Now, let's just say you're more into the damage side and you don't actually want to use that kind of buff, or you think it's, a little bit useless. Wicked is definitely one of the better ways to go, because obviously you're constantly applying status effects, meaning you are constantly getting a weapon damage buff. All right, moving on to the chest piece. If you are using the Acosta go bag, one of the best talents you can get for the chest piece is actually Mad Bomber, because obviously you are using the grenades to get the overcharge, and this one gives you 50% grenade radius, which makes it that much easier to actually hit the enemies. Now, a great option if you are using the Energized talent on your backpack is actually the Efficient talent on your chest piece, because whenever you use an armor kit, you have a 50% chance of actually not consuming that armor kit. And in addition to that, it actually doubles the specialization bonus that you get. So this talent just synergizes that much better with the Energized talent. Now, if you're not really into that gimmicky stuff and you just want a nice passive ability that supports your team constantly, and you like to use cover, I would definitely suggest Overwatch, because obviously that gives your team a damage bonus whenever you are in cover, and basically, that just helps you mow down these status affected enemies even faster. I can't stress enough to you guys how effective this build is. I'm actually pretty sure that this build is going to get nerfed just because of how dominant it is in PvE. You can see from this footage that it's just insane how quickly we can blow through these enemies, because no one is having to worry about being shot at. These enemies are just completely staggered, completely stun locked, and as the name of this video is, completely locked down and unable to actually fight back. It is just completely unfair. I can't deny how excited I am for this build. I want you guys to try this build out, because you know what? Look, I understand that a lot of people were having trouble with, 4-man challenge missions. I understand that people were just finding, 4-man heroic nearly impossible. This build in heroic is like a hot knife through butter. I can't overstate that enough. This build just allowed my team to do exactly what they needed to do constantly. And the more efficient that you are at just mastering your cooldowns, the more success you will have with this build. It is just phenomenal how easily you can just stop everything. You can stun lock tanks, you can stun lock rushers, you can just stun lock bosses, and basically just give your team that ability to actually put DPS on target. Look, I'm looking forward to using this build on Legendary. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm excited. So, you know what? Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoy this build as much as I do, and I will see you in the next one.